Good morning, Richwoods. If this is your first week here, welcome to Richwoods Christian Church. We are in a special series, and so we've been starting it differently than we normally would. You can probably feel the tone of our building the moment you walk in, and today is going to be even deeper than we've dove before. We have been in a series called Life Matters, and what we've been discovering, if somehow you didn't see one of our billboards, which would be a miracle of God in and of itself, we have been pressing into mental health stigmas and struggles. Not only the weight of those who carry them, but also the weight of those who try to love the people who carry them. And with every single week, we've done the same kind of disclaimer of letting you know if the topic is of a sensitive nature, you have the option to place your children. I don't see many children in the room, but today we are going to press into a conversation about suicide. So I want to be upfront with you about that. If that catches you off guard, please feel the freedom to take your children to children's ministry. Also feel the freedom if that hits you in a particular way and you don't sense that that is something you're ready to talk about. We have prayed and sought wisdom on handling this topic with gentleness, with wisdom, and with kindness. And so that is what I hope, that no one leaves here wounded, because we've got enough of that going on in the church these days. So I want to let you know that we're going to press into that. Also, we believe highly, as you saw Thursday night, in therapists, counselors, psychiatrists, medical doctors. These are complex issues. Some people will try to stigmatize these and make them simple, make them uncomplicated, and make you feel bad about how complicated you are making them. We are not one of those people. And so please know that we understand that these are complex issues. So before we dive in, I want to read something to you that I actually read this morning and kind of sets the stage for my posture going in. We have placed the weight of the world's suffering upon our shoulders. We are mired in hesitation and overwhelmed by stagnancy. Our nation groans with need. Suffering multiplies by the hour, and it is not the call of his children to ignore our neighbor's cries. Where our understanding falters, where our knowledge dwindles, and where our expertise ends, oh Lord, you meet us there. And that is the heart with which we are pressing in, is that some issues that would not maybe be topics in certain rooms, we believe are the cries of our neighbors. And the guy who is a pretty big deal to us, who walked this earth for 33 and a half years. We know as a historical fact that he said to love your neighbor. And so that is what we are attempting to do. Earl Grollman said, suicide is a whispered word, inappropriate for polite company. Family and friends often pretend they do not hear the words dread sound even when it is uttered. For suicide is a taboo subject that stigmatizes not only the victim, but the survivors as well. P.D. James said, suicide is the most private and mysterious of acts, inexplicable because the chief actor is never there to explain it. We could spend the rest of our morning unpacking the stigmas around suicide and mental health. Each week we have dove into some of those, and we will do that again this morning with suicide. Some of these stigmas may make you feel uncomfortable. Some of these stigmas may even cause you to wonder, do I agree with that? Or that is how I think. I'm pretty certain that these are stigmas that are not helpful when it comes to these kind of conversations. Suicide this is a stigma, is selfish, and people who suicide took the easy way out. That's a stigma that is not helpful. If you've been in religious circles, you probably heard this one: suicide is immoral. I will agree that suicide is tragic. I will not agree that it is immoral. At the very most, not any more immoral than all the other sinful acts we do. Another stigma: people who experience thoughts of suicide are fully intent on dying. I can't tell you how wrong that is. Every study, every therapist, every counselor you will talk to will tell you that's not true. You may know people that experience thoughts of suicide, but they are not intent on dying. Everyone who dies by suicide was depressed or had another mental health disorder. That is not true. People who repeatedly claim they are suicidal are just attention-seeking. Can I just speak into that for a second? Tyler Merritt, I shared this quote that he said in a book called I Take My Coffee Black. He said, "Proximity breeds compassion, and distance breeds suspicion." My guess is if your thought is, man, this person keeps repeatedly claiming they're suicidal, they just really want attention. My guess is you're not close enough. My guess is you haven't got in proximity. My guess is you haven't sat down and talked to them. There are plenty of ways to get attention. We shouldn't treat suicide as one of them. We should give it our attention, right? If you commit suicide, then you don't go to heaven. It's a stigma. I would ask you to prove it to me. Send me all the verses you want. You won't find one that says the reason a person didn't go to heaven is because they committed suicide. It's not even the basis on which we believe we get to heaven. Suicide is an action. Our scripture tells us there's no action that gets you to heaven. There's no work that can be done. It is a gift of God by grace, right? For first responder cultures, the stigmas stack like building blocks when it comes to this issue. Seeking help for the trauma they expose to on a daily basis is considered weak and may impact their perceived fitness for duty. So if I come out and say that I have suicidal thoughts, I have passive suicide thoughts, I struggle with depression and anxiety, how could that impact my career? How could that impact how my brothers and sisters in first responder world look at me? What will they think? I've heard this recently as I'm in the first responder world quite a bit with the chaplaincy. I heard one of the people that I serve say, it's really hard to walk into an office for seeking help when other first responders watch you walk in the office. Even the places we could go for help are hard to go because of stigmas. Peter Lynch said suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Kay Jamison said suicide is not a blot on anyone's name, it is a tragedy. And I hope that if bare minimum what we leave here with is this whole thing is a tragedy. Every time we see it, every time we read about it, every time we hear about someone famous, a pastor, a coworker, a first responder, the first thought, I hope, is that we get close enough to the heart of God to say, that's tragic. Al Green said suicide is not an answer, it's destruction. We'll give you some data on suicide as we have on all the mental health issues. Some of these are alarming. More than 720,000 people die due to suicide every year, according to the WHO. Wrap your head around that number. Suicide is the third leading cause of death among 15 to 29-year-olds, according to the World Health Organization. Approximately 49,000 people die by suicide every year in the United States. If you do the math, that's 1 every 11 minutes. Here's how we can get close in proximity. By the time I'm done speaking, 7 people will have experienced death by suicide in our country. 7. Every 11 minutes. Men die by suicide 3.85 times more than women. Firearms are used in more than 50% of all suicides. White males account for 68% of all suicides in the United States, and approximately 1.6 million suicide attempts happen every single year. Attempts, 1.6 million. And here's what I want to say to all that: stigmas, some of the quotes that give us some definitions, the data. Jonathan Vercochi said this: suicide is a layered, complex issue. It's not simple, and we all need to work together. I'm going to read that again. Suicide is a layered, complex issue. It's not simple, and we all need to work together. Why do a whole series on mental health? Because it's complicated. I've never experienced suicidal ideation. I've never known anybody to. So what does it matter? It's a good weekend to skip at Richwoods. Oh, we all need to work together. If you are a part of this church and say that these topics don't matter, I'll come back when we get to the book of John. You are missing our mission. If you attend this church, our mission is to help people. Help people. So does it matter? Yes. Because the people who experience these kinds of things need help. And you might end up in the very room with someone who's in this struggle. As we attempt to work together this morning on this challenging topic, I want to begin by drawing it into the light. And this can be done. If you struggle in this way, if you have these thoughts, I believe that one of the hardest things to do is to acknowledge the pain. Acknowledge the pain. I have experienced so much feedback from this series, right? So much. Mostly good. A few here and there, right? There's always criticism, right? But one of the things I'm certain of that would be so helpful to you if you struggle in these areas is to outwardly with someone acknowledge the pain. One of the psalmists wrote a beautiful song, and he says this in it in Psalm 31. He says, "Be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eye is wasted from grief. My soul and my body also. My life is spent with sorrow, and my years with sighing. My strength fails because of my iniquity, and my bones waste away." Do you hear what the psalmist does? Unashamedly, he steps out into the public arena and he says, hey, if I'm ever going to find healing, if I'm ever going to be helped, I need to acknowledge the things I'm going through. I need to acknowledge the pain. Maybe not to everyone, but to someone, right? I've shared a lot of my story. I'm going to share more today. I'm going to share the whole entire thing next week. You don't have to step on a stage in front of 1,000 people and share your story. But acknowledge the pain to someone. If I have suicidal thoughts, what's the first most helpful thing you think I could do? Acknowledge the pain. Say it out loud. I am in distress. Say it to a counselor. It's a safe spot. They can't tell anyone, right? Kat Calhoun said this: suicide does not end the chances of life getting worse. Suicide eliminates the possibilities of it ever getting better. And here's where a myth comes in. And we have to be careful as we minister to those and we walk beside those, including our teenagers, right? Where this is becoming like scary frequent, where they're texting their friends, they're looking on ChatGPT for ways to die by suicide? Here's a myth that is scary. Talking about suicide or asking someone if they feel suicidal will encourage suicide attempts. That is a myth. That is a myth. Here's the fact. Talking about suicide provides the opportunity for communication. You are acknowledging someone's pain. You are helping them acknowledge their pain. Imagine if the psalmist wrote that in Psalm 31 and someone next to him said, let's not talk about that. Let's not talk about your distress. Let's not talk about all your sighing. Let's not talk about how you're wasting away. Let's just go look at the sun. We need some vitamin D. Get out in creation. Everything will be okay, right? Asking about suicide shows that you care enough to want to know how someone really is and gives them permission to talk honestly about a difficult and stigmatized subject. It's why the Lord led us in this direction, and I'm so glad we said yes. Church, listen. I'm going to put this up on the screen. We can't continue to ignore conversations about topics that need to be discussed and brought into the light. The church has done it long enough. We can't continue to ignore the conversations about topics. We can't keep saying, you know what, we're not going to talk about sin because sin isn't popular and maybe our attendance will go down. We can't not talk about money. Man, people deal with money every single day, and we, the church, can help people with their money, right? We don't just have to talk about money and like give, right? We can talk about money and stewardship. We can't not talk about sexuality. We can't not talk about mental health issues. We can't not talk about family. We can't not talk about parenting. All those, by the way, are issues that are coming in the next year to two. They're already on the preaching calendar. And why? Why are we pressing those kind of conversations? Man, if you say the wrong thing about that, you could get into the news. You could get negative feedback. You could get criticism. And I have. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it. Suicide is a conversation worthy of discussion because someone needs us to help them acknowledge the pain. Someone. Your distress needs shared with someone. Our sorrow and sighing can be brought to one another. It really can. We need to be safe enough to say, I am wasting away. The intention of the church, agree with its doctrine or not, it doesn't matter. It matters. But I'm saying it doesn't matter for what I'm about to say. When people drive down Knoxville and see a sign that says blank, blank church, what should happen is they should think, that's a safe place for me to go. That's a safe place. No matter what I believe about their God, that is a safe place to go in my pain. Unfortunately, she has become one of the last places we go because people walked in the door over the past decades and hundreds of years, and they got shamed and hurt instead of helped. Now, what do we do about that? We flip the script. We start to step out and say, here's my pain, so you can share yours. And let me share this from personal experience. One of the things that I lost for years after my mental health crisis was who I was. Here's what happens when you have a mental health crisis. You start to think that you are that thing. It's not out here. It's who you are. It's not Chad. It's Chad with suicidal ideation. It's not Chad and anxieties over here. It's Chad who had an anxiety attack. It becomes, you can make it a very part of who you are, right? You become that person. You can do this with your profession too. where you can't even separate yourself from what you do for a living. They're so intertwined. And here's what can happen, is it is vital through the valley of the shadow of death that we sound our note. I'm going to explain to you what that means. A friend of mine, Jay, shared this with our staff over a year ago and talked to us about the powerful opportunity we have to sound our note. We just don't acknowledge our pain, but we sound our note with others. Because here's what happens. We all desire to show people what is under the water, don't you? Like imagine your life is an iceberg. Kelly taught us this last week at staff, right? And you're this iceberg and 90% of it's under the water. And that's most human beings, I think. I think most of us operate with 10% above the water, especially in church, right? That's why we smile, because for 10%, I can smile, right? It's why we get our kids, hey, when we walk in here, you will not act like you do 24/7. Right? Right? I know you jump on my desk at home, but you will not jump on Pastor Chad's desk, right? You will not steal stuff at the church, right? Because we got to keep the 10% up. But what we long for are places and spaces so we can pull back the water and say, here's the other 90. Let me just sound my note. Here I am, all the good, beautiful, ugly, awful, traumatic, and dark. And then what we experience is loved anyway. Right? It's what you long for. Listen to what the psalmist said 3 Psalms later in Psalm 34. He said, the Lord is near the brokenhearted. See, it's interesting. God draws near the 90% we hide. He is near the brokenhearted, and he saves the crushed in spirit. Many are the afflictions of the who? Ooh, I could preach on that for a minute. I could preach on that for a minute. We could be here till noonday, right? Many are the afflictions of those who do right. We think, man, I'm brokenhearted, and I'm crushed, and I'm afflicted because I suck. I want to end my life because I'm no good to anybody. God says, man, the righteous struggle. The kind struggle. The good marriages, they struggle. The good parents, they struggle. Those who have darkness in their mind, it doesn't make them unrighteous. He goes on and says, but the Lord delivers him out of them all. Anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, worry, sorrow, being brokenhearted, or even crushed in spirit does not make you less righteous or less of a person. It does not make you less of a child of God. It does not make you a burden on society, your family, your friends, or your church. Here's what it does, and you need to sound your note. Here's what it does. I struggle with these kind of thoughts. I struggle with these kind of feelings. I struggle, I wrestle, I battle on a frequent basis these kinds of things. And they don't have to be mental health. You can fill them in with anything, right? I struggle with not being the mom that I see other moms be on Instagram. By the way, that's their Instagram. They don't show you all the tragedy. We post the best pictures, right? Here's the reality. These struggles confirm your humanity. That's all they do. You are human. You're into a broken world with evil people and difficult situations. Psalm 51:17. David is loathing his sin and all his mistakes, but he comes to himself. In verse 17, he says, the sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise. Here's what David says to us. Sound your note of brokenness. Whatever it is. How could I ever tell someone what I think? People will hide their brokenness, affliction, and pain if they don't feel the freedom to be who they truly are. It's a fact. Let me give you an example. What do you think would happen if you told someone today, I have passive suicidal thoughts some days? Passive suicidal thoughts, read this great article. It doesn't mean you have an action plan to eliminate your life. It does mean that you contemplate not being here. That you have thoughts of not being alive. That you have thought about suicide that day. Passive suicidal thoughts. Imagine you went to someone today and said, I'm going to sound my note. I have passive suicidal thoughts. What if you told a friend, I don't always want to be alive? What do you think would happen? Let me tell you what would happen, because we've kept this so in the dark, we only react a few ways. Here's what would happen. The person you told would have fear. I'm supposed to sound your note, and I need to acknowledge the pain. So I'm going to tell you something in confidence that is going to be a little difficult to hear. I don't always want to be alive, and our natural reaction is to fear. If we don't fear, we will at least panic. And the last thing someone needs in crisis is for you to be in crisis or to overreact. People will hesitate to sound their note if they think it's going to be received by fear, panic, and overreaction. They will. They're already in fear and panic. They don't need more of that from the person they sounded their note to. But what if we could create spaces and find people who are willing to have the conversations everyone is afraid to have? What if we could step forward and normalize the struggle? What if we could begin sounding our note? So I'll sound mine. The first time I had a suicidal thought was at Kelly and Philip Mosley's house, laying on a bed, surrounded by friends, and my wife laying beside me. And I was in such darkness and pain that I rolled over to my wife and I said goodbye. Because I didn't want to be here anymore. A few weeks later, as I was working through my train wreck, it got so dark that I was in our bedroom screaming at the God of the universe. And you know what I said to him? I said, I would never do this to my kids. So why are you doing it to me? That's what I felt. I would never let my kids feel this level of darkness. I had to sound my note. Since then, still today, I have passive suicidal thoughts. I'm curious some days why I'm here. I have dark days that I wonder. I wonder what it'd be like. It's hard. Maybe you do too. Maybe you don't. Maybe you can't even wrap your head around that. Maybe for you it creates a tension that is so difficult. How can you be a pastor and a follower and a child of Jesus and contemplate those things? but I acknowledge the pain. And I sound my note. And here is what I can also personally testify and share with you today. And this is the only reason I share this with you. The only reason. No matter what you are carrying or someone you know is going through, I am a living, walking example that healing is possible. Matthew 5:4 said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." You know what he doesn't say there? Blessed are those who stuff. Blessed are those who walk alone. Blessed are those who bootstrap up and get over their pain. Blessed are those who don't tell anyone. No. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Psalm 147 says he heals the brokenhearted and he binds up their wounds. Here's a myth for you. Once a person is intent on suicide, there is no way of stopping them. That is not true. Here's the fact. Suicide can be prevented. People can be helped. Suicide crisis can be relatively short-lived even. Immediate practical help such as staying with the person. Look how simple this is. Staying with the person. Did you notice a part of my story was there was people in the room and my wife laying on the bed beside me, staying with the person, encouraging them to talk, help them build future plans, connect them with a professional can avert the intention to attempt or die by suicide. I love this quote. Jonathan Martinson said, "Feelings are much like waves. We can't stop them from coming, but we can choose which ones to surf." They're like waves. I almost drowned in a wave of anxiety, but I didn't. And I still don't. I consider what it would mean to no longer live, but here I am. I think about death and dying more than I think maybe the average person does, but I'm still riding my surfboard in the middle of Illinois, by the way. I am healed, healing, and still learning. Please hear this. That some waves may always be a part of my life. Didn't see that coming. I wish I didn't struggle. But I've learned that I can ride the waves until he takes me home. You may struggle with something, and you may come to the prayer room after the service, and you may ask me to heal it. And I'll pray that it does. But some waves, I believe, are meant to be present in our lives. If you've lost a loved one, does it ever go away? No. But you ride your surfboard. You find other people to ride with. Beth Moore said, "A broken heart heals when we allow the healing to go as deep as the wound went." And as we've done every week, because I think the majority of the room will probably find themselves or does trying to help family, friends, coworkers, and neighbors. And we want you to help. We want to help you help other people. And so here's some practicality to all this. The myth is this: the only effective intervention for suicide comes from professional therapists with extensive experience in the area. That is not true. You know where my first help came from? My tribe, my wife, my friends. The fact is, all people who interact with others in crisis can help them by way of emotional support and encouragement. If you are in the life of someone who wrestles in these ways, you are not there by accident. Instead of trying to figure out why it's all going on, just embrace that you are there to love them through it. If you are their parent, man, the best thing you can do is acknowledge that you are with them in the muck and mire the whole way. Not all individuals want to seek the help of a professional, as there may be cultural, racial, job-related concerns or stigmas preventing them. Not all people want professional help yet. They may just need you. Practical steps to support someone. I'm going to give you a few and then put a few resources up on the screen that I'm going to have you take a screenshot of, because I think you should always carry them with you. Listening is one of the most helpful things you can do. Please don't undervalue that. Create a safe space free of judgment or giving advice. Job's friends did good, and then they did bad. Right? Be honest and direct. You may feel like you can't, but you need to. I'm telling you, one of the things that my wife did so well is she got empowered by a friend to tell me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear. Get out of bed, Manbeck. But I don't want to. Get up anyway. That's hard for an Enneagram 9. Especially when you're talking to an Enneagram 8. If you're worried about someone, tell them your concerns and let them know you care about them. Don't be afraid to ask questions. This was so good for me to read. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Like sometimes when people talk about the feeling situations you have been describing, they're thinking about suicide. Are you thinking about suicide? That is a good question. Are you thinking about suicide? The things you have been saying cause me to wonder if you're thinking about killing yourself. Are you thinking about killing yourself? If yes, do you have a plan for how you would do it? Calmly ask simple, direct questions. Find out what kind of help they would appreciate. Man, that's good in all mental health stuff, by the way. Like if you have someone that's just struggling with stress, right? That's circumstance caused. We'll talk about the difference between anxiety and stress next week. What a great question to just like simplify the world. What can I do for you? If I didn't have to do the laundry, it would help. Man, cash, that's gold. While I'm in crisis, would you just take care of this? Right? You're not taking it away, but you're ministering to it. Be mindful of different cultures, especially military and first responders and races. Not everyone will want to reach out to a professional for support. You may ask, who do you usually go to when you have a problem or need support? Who could we contact together right now? Right? Help them stay safe in the moment while help is being arranged. And if you are in person, please hear this. It's so obvious, but it'd be easy to miss. Never leave them alone. Talking about suicide should be carefully managed. If you do not feel comfortable with this topic, because you might not, please seek the assistance of another people helper. It's never a good idea to try to be a hero. Get this person what they need and who they need. If you are uncomfortable and able to hear the hard conversation, it may lead to the person shutting down to protect you. Isn't that wild? If you respond with fear, panic, or overreaction, I will tell you, I am going to protect you by removing me from your stress life. So if you're going through a lot, don't add a lot. Find someone who isn't. Right? Tap out and ask for help when and if you become too overwhelmed or exhausted. Right? So on the screen are going to be some local resources. I have a picture of this in my phone in case I ever forget the numbers. These are just good to have on your person. You run into someone, you're talking to someone, and you ask these questions, or they're in crisis, and you don't have these by heart. 911, always a great number. Immediate danger should be an immediate response. Call it. Well, what if it wasn't as dangerous as I thought it was? Don't try and discern that. Get help. 988 if it's just at risk. Peoria County ERS Emergency Response System is 309-671-8084. That's Peoria County. You can get help there. Tazewell, Woodford counties are on the screen. Okay? Here's all I say to you. I share my story, which is a big risk for me, to just let you know that healing is possible, help is possible, and there are some waves that stay with you, but you can ride them and live the abundant life. I love my life. No one has it better. So please don't send me a bunch of emails of concern. Don't do that. Like, it's not going to be helpful. I have my tribe. I have the best tribe in the world. But if you are suffering, if you are struggling, I just want you to know it can and will get better. Acknowledge your pain, sound your note, and hold on to, while the waves are coming, that healing is possible. Now we're going to sing another song and then I'll come back up, but I please want you to hear this so you can prep yourself for it. Today's a really special day because we're going to have the prayer room open, and me and the other elders and some of our wives and some trusted people are going to be in there if you need prayer of any sort. It doesn't have to just be on this topic. If there's someone you're looking for healing for, there's someone you're carrying heavy on your heart, me and the elders and our wives and a few other people will be in there to pray for you. So if you're a woman, connect you with a woman, man, connect you with a man, whatever the case. You come in there with your spouse. It's right through that door, safe space, and we're going to linger there and pray together. Okay? If you need healing, we'll anoint you with oil. If you just want to bow down in front of the fireplace, we'll do it. If you want to sit by the water and just have peace for a minute, we'll do it. Okay? Only come in that room if you want prayer today or you're bringing someone who needs prayer. Okay? That's where we'll be. So after this song, I'm going to come back up. I'll dismiss. And then we're going to go in there, some of us, unashamedly, and say, I need prayer. Or this person needs prayer. Right? If it's full, just wait. Wait in line. Okay? We would love to pray with you today. Would you please rise and worship with us?